Good morning, Brew Daily Show. I'm Neal Freyman.
And I'm Toby Howell.
Today, the Academy Awards go to YouTube.
Then everything seems to be going south for Tesla, except its stock price. It's Thursday, December 18th. Let's ride.
Like all of you, Morning Brew Daily is getting our ducks in order before the holidays, firing off circle back emails, and recording special holiday episodes to air during the week of Christmas. For one of those special episodes, we need your help. Toby and I are going full AMA and will answer questions you have for us, and anything is fair game, from what our day-to-day schedule looks like to our pick to win the World Cup.
If you want your question to be chosen, shoot an email to morningbrewdaily@morningbrew.com and put question with 4 question marks in the subject line so it stands out. Make sure it's 4, or else how can we tell if you really mean it? We also accept bribes. Or if that's too hard, you can just DM us at Instagram at MBDailyShow. I don't think anything is off limits, Neal. Well, maybe the secret ingredient in your delicious latke recipe, but other than that, we're an open book. And now a word from our sponsor, Public. Neal, I don't know about you, but with the holidays around the corner, my schedule is shaping up to be pretty packed.
I know, between visiting family and trying to squeeze a getaway in during our time off, it's going to be busy.
That's why I like Public. If you're strapped for time, investing with Public is a good way to go. They have generated assets, which allow you to turn any idea into an investable index with AI.
You can literally type in any prompt and put the AI to work. It screens thousands of stocks and then builds a one-of-a-kind index and lets you backtest it against the S&P 500. Generated assets are like ETFs with infinite possibilities, completely customizable and based on your thesis, not someone else's.
Stay busy and invested. Get started at public.com/morningbrew and earn an uncapped 1% bonus when you transfer your portfolio. That's public.com/morningbrew. Paid for by Public Investing. Full disclosures in podcast description. In a bigger shakeup than the Moonlight La La Land debacle, the Oscars just got Will Smith slapped into another dimension of entertainment, ditching broadcast TV for streaming starting in 2029. The lucky service that will be home to Hollywood's biggest night is YouTube. Yes, you'll be able to catch the Best Picture Awards winner between chiropractor ASMR and Catan strategy videos. This is a watershed moment, to say the least, marking the end of the Oscars as a broadcast TV staple. ABC had aired the Oscars for more than half a century, but the Academy decided to auction off the rights in recent weeks. And despite YouTube reportedly offering a smaller rights fee than ABC was paying, they ended up winning thanks to the global reach they could offer. Remember, YouTube accounts for 13% of all television viewing time in the US, the biggest share of any streaming service, according to Nielsen. What's in it for YouTube? Despite shrinking in recent years, the Oscars brings an air of institutional legitimacy and prestige to the platform, and is one of the only events outside of sports and the Macy's Day Parade that still draws a reliable live audience. But Hollywood remains skeptical. Screenwriter Daniel Kunka posted on X, "YouTube broadcasting the Oscars is like shaking hands with the guy who's trying to kill you." Neal, this feels like the stop, he's already dead Simpsons meme. Streaming has won.
Yeah, YouTube is TV now. 13% of all television viewing time in the US, and we now know that more people watch YouTube on their big screen TVs at home than on their mobile device or their computer. So the question is, what will the Oscars look like on YouTube? And will the audience actually come over from ABC to YouTube? And will there be a bigger audience in general around the globe? That's what the Academy is hoping for. You wonder what a viewing experience will look like on YouTube. You're watching an Academy Awards, which lasts 3 to 4 hours, but you also see all those videos on your right-hand side. Maybe you're just like, oh, that's interesting, Best Supporting Actor, but oh, Jamal Crawford highlights from 2005. That looks interesting, and you don't exactly have that same experience on broadcast television, so there is a lot of question marks about how big and the behavior of this particular audience.
I think that audiences will go to where the content is. I'm just thinking about YouTube bidding for NFL Sunday Ticket and airing some early season games on their YouTube TV streaming platform, and 18 million people tuned in. So if you have something like football or like hypothetically the Academy Awards that people want to watch, they will end up finding it there. So I think that was part of their thinking, and part of the success of their NFL push has made them emboldened to try and buy up an asset like the Oscars. It is still a good get for YouTube. Viewership hit a record low of 10.4 million people in 2021 during the pandemic. Oscars used to peak at 57 million people. So again, we're not in the heyday by any means of even in the history of the Oscars, but it is still a very lucrative asset for TV. The network ABC generated roughly $140 million annually from ad sales when it came to airing the Oscars. Even as ratings have slumped, what they did is just put more ads and charge a premium price for them. So it's still one of the premier events when it comes to TV. So YouTube is getting their hands on a declining, albeit still money-making asset.
And I don't want to be hyperbolic, but yesterday might go down in history as a watershed moment for the media industry, the day when digital upstarts actually became the kings of the industry. Because not only did YouTube take over the Oscars from Disney, but we also had Warner Brothers rejecting Paramount from its new offer and still opting for Netflix. And Netflix is taking over, if this deal comes to fruition, HBO and Warner Brothers Movie Studio. So you have Warner Brothers Movie Studio, HBO Max, and the Oscars all going to YouTube or Netflix, potentially in what really is a historic day for the changing of the tides in media.
I think it makes sense for the Oscars, though. If you want to go where young people are, go to YouTube. There's obviously some inherent irony in the fact that this is it's celebrating theatrical institutions, theatrical releases, and yet it is on a streaming service. You even go back to last year's Best Picture winner, Anora. Not a lot of people saw it in theaters, but then a few months later it came to Hulu, which is where the vast majority of people have seen it. So everything is symbolic all the way down. Now streaming is eating the world, and it now just ate the Oscars.
And will be interesting to see like whether they YouTubeify it up, like is Mr. Beast gonna host?
Oh,
That's
God,
the question, you know. But also there's gonna be no length limits. You know, that was a big contention between ABC and the Academy. Was ABC was saying we got to go to our other programming. We want you to tighten this up to maybe like 3.5 hours. They also had limits on language and what could be shown and a 10-second delay and all of that. And that all goes out the window with YouTube, where it might be a bigger free-for-all. So things could get a little even crazier than they actually are.
Let's move on. Trump is ratcheting up pressure on Venezuela, trying to choke off its economic lifeblood in a high-stakes geopolitical game following months of pressure against Nicolas Maduro. Yesterday, Trump ordered a blockade of sanctioned oil tankers entering and exiting Venezuela. Venezuela is completely surrounded by the largest armada ever assembled in the history of South America, Trump wrote on Truth Social. Oil exports are the bedrock of Venezuela's economy, accounting for 90% of its $24 billion in export revenue. Trump has said the blockade would continue until Venezuela returned, quote, all of the oil, land, and other assets that they previously stole from us. That's likely a reference to the 1970s nationalization of Venezuela's oil industry, in which U.S. oil companies, including Exxon, Mobil, and Shell, lost around $5 billion in assets. The one exception is Chevron, which still operates under a confidential U.S. license, with a spokesperson for the company saying that the latest blockade won't affect its operations, making the U.S. company a key variable in whether this blockade actually works. How is this affecting the broader oil market? Not as much as you might think. Despite Venezuela sitting on one of the largest natural oil deposits in the world, it only accounts for less than 1% of global exports, so prices barely budge despite the blockade threat. Neal, Venezuela's economy is driven almost entirely by a single resource, so it's certainly susceptible to this sort of pressure.
Yeah, tensions are absolutely soaring down there in the Caribbean. Last Wednesday, there was a tanker that was traveling across the Caribbean Sea carrying crude from Venezuela to Cuba and China, which is where all of Venezuela's, virtually all of Venezuela's oil exports go. And it was seized by the United States because it was a quote-unquote sanctioned vessel. You might be wondering, okay, what is a sanctioned vessel? Which kind of tankers are on this particular list? Well, it's any oil tanker that has a history of violating U.S. sanctions. Virtually all of them are by carrying Iranian oil. So now any tanker that has ever carried Iranian oil is up for grabs for the United States in what are rapidly escalating tensions here.
Venezuela does something that tries to skirt U.S. sanctions by operating what they called shadow fleets, or are referred to as shadow fleets, which basically digitally spoof their locations. They do all sorts of things to try to skirt these sanctions. Sometimes they fly other countries' flags. The ship that you just mentioned that was recently seized was flying Guyana's flag, even though it was carrying oil from Venezuela. The U.S. is trying to crack down on that practice in particular. One thing, when you zoom out to the broader oil market, is that Venezuela is just not as major of a player as it once was. If you go back to its export revenue derived from oil in 2012, it made $120 billion per year, but since then, its ability to extract the oil from the ground and process it has just fallen by the wayside. And now its current oil export revenue is just above $20 billion. So it's not in terms of the global market. Yes, it might affect some of the oil shipments going into China, but it's just a small player in terms of the amount of oil that is being processed every day around the world.
Small player in the global scene, but very big for just the basic functioning of the Venezuela government, which is why this is being very closely watched by people in Caracas and as well as DC. Tesla is going through it. Sales are slumping in the US, Europe, and China. And this week, it learned it may not be able to sell its cars in California, its biggest American market, for 30 days. Its stock is also near a record. On Tuesday, Tesla shares notched an all-time high as investors' enthusiasm for Tesla's robo-taxi business overshadowed some of the more short-term challenges. CEO Elon Musk, who owns a whole lot of Tesla shares, now has a net worth of over $630 billion, nearly $400 billion more than the second-place guy. The reason behind Tesla's recent stock pop has to do with its massive pivot to AI and self-driving cars, which got closer to actually making the company money this week. Musk said that Tesla has begun testing robo-taxis in Austin, Texas, without anyone on board, representing progress from the safety drivers that have been at the wheel for the past 6 months. Investors place most of the value of Tesla in this robo-taxi future, which is why they may be ignoring the major problems affecting its meat and potatoes EV business. On Tuesday, an administrative law judge in California ruled that Tesla has been deceptively advertising its autopilot and full self-driving driver assistance features, confusing customers into believing that they could let their car drive completely on its own when that's not the case. Tesla could face a sales ban of 30 days in the state if it doesn't update its marketing. Tesla shares did pull back from their record high yesterday, but right now, Toby, seems like the bulls are bucking the bears.
It's so bizarre because this California issue is no small potatoes. It's the largest market for car sales in the U.S. It's responsible for 11% of the total worldwide number of EVs that Tesla sold in the first 9 months of 2025. It is by far their biggest market. And here a judge is saying you got to either, one, make all your cars actually able to self-drive and, have autopilot accurately describe what's going on, or change the name of that, or face a ban. And yet here was Tesla's stock just kind of continuing to rip, although you did say it did pull back yesterday. But if any other car company was facing a ban in their biggest market by far, that would send the stock cratering. But as you said, the Tesla trade is beyond EVs at this point. It focuses much more highly on autonomous driving and robotics.
And while EV sales are slumping, there's an interesting data point that they aren't slumping as bad as all of the other EV companies, which we know Ford, it took this $19.5 billion write-down earlier this week after this $7,500 tax credit was removed. So Tesla sales are declining, but its market share is actually increasing because it's not doing as bad as the other EV companies as well. So that is an interesting wrinkle in Tesla's EV story, but that's not really the story that Elon Musk wants to tell at all. He wants you to tell you that Tesla will ultimately sell 1 million humanoid robots that are called Optimus, and they're going to have self-driving cars in every city across the globe.
I think Elon did call this too in Q2 when this EV tax credit was ending. He said that ending the credit would be devastating for our competitors and would hurt Tesla slightly. It is true. Tesla consumers in general tend to be, higher income, so maybe they're less affected by the $7,500 EV tax credit expiring. And then also, it is just like a cheaper car than most of the other EVs out there. So fascinating that he did call his shot, but in the long term, that shot isn't what's first and foremost driving the Tesla trade at all.
What a roller coaster for Tesla stock. If you're a Tesla stockholder, you have a lot of whiplash this year. There was a 36% plunge in the first quarter. That was the worst quarter that Tesla's had since 2022. That was when Elon Musk was doing all his Doge things, and there was a lot of slumping in the EV business in particular, and robotaxi seemed like a long way off. But now there's been a huge comeback over the rest of the year. Tesla stock is now up 23% of the year. It's outpacing a lot of the rest of the Magnificent Seven for the last few months. So Elon Musk now worth $630 billion.
Jeez Louise. All right, speaking of numbers, we're going to come back with Neal's Numbers.
Welcome to Neal's Numbers, the segment where I share 3 stats in the week's news that will make you think this really is the most wonderful time of the year. For my first number, I wouldn't sweat it if you're planning to gift your family socks for the holidays. It might be exactly what they want. Shopping data show that people are going practical over fanciful this holiday season, opting for needs instead of wants given persistent inflation and a shaky economy. According to the Washington Post, online sales of refrigerators and freezers jumped 1,700% from average levels in October on Cyber Monday. Vacuum cleaner sales surged 1,300%, cookware 950%, power tools 900%, and jackets 850%. Vivek Pandya, director of Adobe Digital Insights, said these are items that are, in many instances, absolutely essential. Consumers are cognizant of the broad environment, and they're being very strategic about purchases, whether it's for themselves or gift giving. And that's reflected in retail's winners and losers this winter. Discounters like TJ Maxx, dollar stores, and Walmart are enjoying booming sales, while purveyors of fancier items are desperate for attention. Between Black Friday and Cyber Monday, purchases at high-end department stores tumbled 10% from last year, while luxury clothing brands declined 5%. Toby, I hope you don't mind, but I'm getting you a Phillips head screwdriver for Christmas.
I need one, which is exactly why I totally understand where this story is coming from. A lot of people are shifting their gifts, saying like, hey, give me either cash or just give me something I actually need. Give me the pot that I have been looking for. Give me the pan that I have been needing in the kitchen. So some families have started taking it even further and just wrapping up really basic household items and giving it as gift giving, like shampoo bottles and diapers, because it is still fun to unwrap stuff. That is still an important tradition for a lot of people, even if what's contained inside is not necessarily something that is super fun, but is super practical.
I love that. I mean, that's always what I thought of gift giving, is giving somebody something or getting something that I actually need in my day-to-day life. But I understand the counter argument, which is a gift is supposed to be something special and beyond what you need to show you that, I care about your interests broadly, more so than just whether you have shampoo or toothpaste in your bathroom.
Are you asking for golf balls right now? Because that is both something you want and need. So the Venn diagram right there, I think golf balls are right in the middle.
Okay, for my next number, a humble, much ridiculed vegetable is set to grab the spotlight next year. Of course, I'm talking about the cabbage. In its 2026 preview, Pinterest identified cabbage as one of its big trends for the year, mentioning that searches for cabbage dumplings spiked by 110%, Polish cabbage soup by 95%, and cabbage Alfredo by 45% between last summer and this one. Restaurants have also been featuring the veggie a lot more. While already popular on menus in London, the number of American menu items mentioning cabbage grew 20% year over year between October 2023 and October 2025. So why are people going loco for leaf? One reason is its nutrient makeup. Cabbage is high in fiber, which is perfect for a growing number of people who are fiber maxing. It's also cheap to buy, perfect for people who are save maxing at this time of sticky inflation. Also, dare I say it, cabbage can taste really good if you douse it in enough flavoring, like the delicious jar of kimchi I have in my fridge currently. Toby, are you hopping aboard the cabbage train?
I've been on the cabbage train. It is delicious. It's so filling too, because it's just such a large volume leafy green. So you just toss it in a pan, saute it, and it makes for a pretty good meal. It is getting support from all sorts of the world sectors of the world right now, because you have the nutritionists saying like, hey, you should be cabbage maxing. Fiber is the new trend right now. It's going to overtake protein as the trendiest new nutrient to overdose on in the next year. So you have the nutritionists recommending it, but then you also have the chefs at fine dining places saying like, hey, this is a great vessel for flavor. You can do a lot with cabbage. So you're going to restaurants, seeing it on the menu, you're having your nutritionist whisper in your ear. So everything's coming up cabbage right now.
All right, for my final number, a special birthday for a special person. The legendary author Jane Austen would have turned 250 years old on Tuesday, sparking celebrations all over the world from adoring fans. In her just 41 years of life, Austen made an indelible mark on the world through her novels, which include Pride and Prejudice and Sense and Sensibility. Even people who haven't read her books know that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. They know all about Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy, and that's likely because of how many movie and TV adaptations have been inspired by her books. Did you know that Clueless is a modern retelling of Emma and Bridget Jones's Diary is based on Pride and Prejudice? Well, I didn't, but it speaks to the timelessness of her stories. Austen's fame has only grown over time. During World War I and World War II, long after she died, British soldiers were given copies of her books to help them pass the time. In 2017, her portrait was featured on a new £10 note released by the Bank of England, and these days, Jane Austen-related tourism generates tens of millions of dollars each year as fans seek out the real-life English settings of their favorite scenes. Compare that to the paltry $67,000 Austen earned over her lifetime as an author who mostly published anonymously as by a lady. Toby, how are you partaking in Jane mania?
The Austen industrial complex is far bigger than anything I could have ever imagined. There are Jane Austen themed tea sets with flavors like Pride and Peppermint. There's a whole scent industry. You can get a candle that smells like Mr. Darcy walking across a foggy meadow, which admittedly sounds kind of delightful. You can spray yourself with the Jane Austen Library perfume collection. And also, don't get me started about the Jane Austen XXX adaptation. There's a book called Pride and Promiscuity, the lost sex scenes of Jane Austen, for sale on Amazon if you're interested in something like that. She is just translated very well today. The things that she wrote about are enduring themes that relationships and, love and lust and whatever, those are just as true today as they were during her time. So just fascinating, her staying power and how she's arguably the most popular she's ever been, even this many years after her death.
All right, let's sprint to the finish with some final headlines. President Trump gave a primetime address last night defending his handling of the economy at a time when Americans are feeling increasingly downbeat about persistently high costs of basic things like housing, food, and utilities. Trump cast most of the blame on economic woes on his predecessor, Joe Biden, and that other global leaders have assured him we are, quote, the hottest country anywhere in the world. It's unclear whether that message will resonate with voters whose views on Trump's handling of the economy have reached an all-time low. A new NPR PBS News Marist poll found just 36% of Americans approve of it, the lowest level in the 6 years of that poll. And Trump didn't do himself any favors by cutting into the Survivor finale.
I know, that was the talk of the control room this morning, that the Survivor finale was cut off. But the final thing that Trump also announced was a warrior dividend, which is payments to the military. He says that active and reserve U.S. military members will receive a $1,776 check, $1,776, as a warrior dividend before Christmas. He said that tariff revenue was contributing to their ability to pay this out. So that was sort of maybe the PR win, or maybe the headline win that he was going for with this address, saying that all of our servicemen and women are going to get paid. Finally, if you've ever wanted to go to a Roman history museum but wanted it to be a little more claustrophobic and unpleasant, may I introduce you to the city's Colosseum subway station. The stop finally opened on Tuesday after 11 years of construction, but one could say it's been in development since 64 AD, which is when the ancient remains of thermal baths were damaged by a fire, leaving scattered artifacts behind for modern Romans to discover. The Colosseum stop is part station, part museum, giving commuters a chance to catch their train and a view of artifacts uncovered during the site's excavation. You can find exhibits showing vases, plates, wells, and buckets dating back to the 1st century, as well as a video of what ancient Romans would have looked like in the same location. Now, I don't know, though. I still think the Metropolitan Lorimer stop on the L might be better.
Well, it certainly has a very high-profile figure living above it, that's for sure. But yeah, building a subway in Rome is a lot like making cacio e pepe. It looks simple, but it actually requires a lot of precise techniques, and that was required for building what is under Rome is 3 millennia of civilizations. So it took a lot of delicacy, and they actually had to do some hand digging to create this subway station. But the reward was worth it because they found more than 500,000 artifacts while creating this station, including 28 ancient wells and a vast military complex that includes a barracks and a commander's villa. But the people living in Rome or the people visiting Rome probably don't care a whole lot about that. They care a lot about not going through traffic, which is getting really bad in the center of Rome, and now they can skirt underneath it with the subway.
I think it's a great idea. It was probably an unavoidable idea. Whenever you are digging in Rome, you were going to encounter artifacts. So the fact that they just leaned into it and say, let's just make it part museum as well. I can't imagine, though, you're racing to go get your train and suddenly there's a group of tourists huddled around, looking at some old plates. That would drive me crazy. So I hope, Romans are a little more chill than New Yorkers are.
That is all the time we have. Thanks so much for starting your morning with us, and have a wonderful Thursday. If you want to get in touch or ask us a question for the upcoming Q&A episode, you can send a note to morningbrew@morningbrew.com. Remember the 4 question marks, or DM us on Instagram @MBDailyShow. Let's roll the credits. Emily Milliron is our executive producer. Raymond Liu is our producer. Our associate producers are Olivia Graham and Olivia Lake. There's nothing hair and makeup would not do for those who are really their friends. Devin Emery is our president, and our show is a production of Morning Brew.
Great show today, Neal. Let's run it back tomorrow.